early African societies and the Bantu migrations. I'm a little bit, I guess, bummed because if we were meeting live and in person, I actually have some video to show that I think is pretty cool, but I can't show this in this modality because YouTube's algorithm, it's mad at me, or I get in trouble for copyright infringement. So this is one of these legalities that needs to be worked out in a remote environment. I have the rights to show a video in class, but since it's going out over YouTube, I don't have that right anymore. Because I don't own the video, I bought it. I mean, I own a copy of the video, but I don't own the rights to it. So I'll try to find something that's legal and maybe link that to you so you can watch it directly on YouTube. Okay, so early African societies and the Bantu migrations, just checking my time here. I'll try to do this. Chapter should take about 2 segments, or about 40 minutes. Okay. Africa. It's big, right? A continent, 5,000 miles north and south. It's diverse with respect to climate and geography, topography. The desert stretching across from east to west or west to east, the desert has gotten larger over the last 10,000 years. At one time, the Sahara Desert, the largest desert in the world, was grassland. It was actually well watered in the east, the Sudan. Okay? So we have grasslands and jungle on the coast, in the east, snowy mountains, highest mountains in the world, the Nile River, which flows 4,000 miles. We will look at a map in a moment, but flows this way, okay, which would be up to the ceiling. Well, look, maps are a convenience, they're a model, right? There's no up or down in space. It flows from highlands to lowlands, the highlands of Ethiopia into the Mediterranean. Okay. Climate change actually helped to bring about the development of agriculture. There was agriculture in the west of Africa, the Sudan. As that land dried out, people moved to a source of water, the Nile, which is not going to dry out. Okay, so desertification, the becoming of desert, 7,000 to 8,000 years ago, right? And it's still expanding today, right? Because of very rapid climate change today, global warming, the desert's getting larger, and this really matters, people. What if you live on the edge of the desert? You have grassland, you're raising livestock, but suddenly your grassland is now desert. What are you going to do? Move? Really? Onto someone else's farm? You think they're going to let you do that? You think you're going to, I'm growing grain and sorghum. I'm going to let you move your cows onto my farm? There's going to be a fight, right? So climate change is going to bring human conflict unless we figure out a way to mitigate that while we slow down the rate of climate change. Okay? It's not just coastlines. Look in the news today. I could have pulled up articles where California is basically on fire. So it's not just extreme heat and dryness like we see in California, speaking of kind of a desertification. It's also the risk of, a couple weeks ago we had hurricanes hitting Louisiana, Texas, right? Coastal areas flooded. So one of the big changes in history has been the human's impact on the environment. Can't blame humans for what happened 7,000 years ago to any great extent. Some people will say they hunted large mammals to extinction, and there's evidence to that, yes. But the global warming that was taking place in the end of the last ice age, that's not due to human action. Okay? We've just exacerbated, sped it up, made it worse over the last 150 years. Okay? So you got that to look forward to. Sorry, future. Anybody watching this 200 years from now, we knew and we did little about it, so our apologies. So some people moved into the Nile Valley, began to farm. Similar to the Euphrates and Tigris, right? If you can bring the river to your fields through irrigation, you might have productive agriculture, and that's what they did. Population goes up, society becomes more complicated, there's a division of labor. Hey, you dig the dishes, I'll engineer them. I don't think that's easier. Sorry to engineering majors, it's probably not any easier. Someone's in charge, someone explains the universe, there's the specialization of labor, right? Powerful nations will develop, both in the correct term is Lower Nile. Let me say the Northern Nile and the Southern Nile, Egypt and Nubia. What do I mean by Northern and Southern? This actually is Lower Egypt. Okay, it's north on my map, and the water flows this way. toward the ceiling, which doesn't make sense, intuitively for you. But if you turn the map down, something would work, right? So there are highlands here in Ethiopia, and the water flows into this kind of bathtub of the Mediterranean, which meant that the Nile would flood annually, but a gentle flood. Not like the Euphrates or Tigris, where people seem to be always worried about their entire civilization flooding. The Nile flooded rather gradually and predictably, and as it did, it brought down alluvial soil, like fertilized soil, and watered this delta, this region. Okay? So you'd kind of go out, not that it was easy, believe me, I'm sure it was not, but you'd go out and you'd put the seeds in the field and then wait for the water to come, like you didn't have to water your crops. No, the water just came, okay, every year at about the same time. Well, as the snow cap melted in the mountains. In Nubia will be less well known. There are cataracts, and if you're not sure what cataracts are, you don't need to get your eyes examined. Cataracts mean waterfalls. So the Nile was very navigable. You could move up and down it. Yes, up this way and down it this way. Ked and Kent was actually better words. The Egyptians used Ked to go one way and Ked to go the other. Who cares? Cataracts are actually waterfalls. So really tough to navigate into this more mountainous region here. Okay? So Egypt's a large floodplain, better farming, more food, more complexity, more wealth. Okay? But the Nile will connect the Mediterranean with sub-Saharan Africa. So this kind of aorta, this bloodline of Africa. Small states will begin to develop, especially in the Nile Delta, about 6,000 years ago. About 5,000 years ago, they are united by a ruler named Menes, sometimes known as Narmer, which doesn't sound anything like Menes, right? Let's just use the word Menes. Menes will unite northern and southern Egypt, or lower and upper Egypt, and proclaim his rule from Memphis. He will be honored as a god on earth. A god on earth at Memphis. You might think this is Elvis. No, it's actually Menes. That's a joke. Don't worry. Nobody's laughing here. Everyone laughs out when I say that in class anyway. The pharaoh, the great house, the king, is seen as a god on earth, and in fact is seen as the son, S-O-N, of the S-U-N, right? The child of the sun. The sun being Amun. Sometimes known as Amun-Ra. Amun in one part of Egypt, Ra in the other, just put the name together. Amun-Ra. Oh, it's the God of all of us. Okay, the creator God, the sun God, of many gods. This is a polytheistic society. Let's just quickly do a kind of political sandwich here. So we have this archaic period when Menes united Egypt, and an old kingdom when there's great wealth and the pyramids are constructed. Great funerary rites, so bury the pharaoh so his spirit can come back to the body time and again and again and again. And also, the conquering of people to the, now I'm getting confused, to the south, right? The kingdom of Nubia is conquered. This is the only time during which pyramids are constructed. It took a couple dozen years to build them, tens of thousands of workers. The video I would show if I had it would talk about how these guys worked for beer and often fell off the pyramids. And how do we know that? We can dig up their bones and see that people died, from falling from a high place. Well, there were no high places except for the pyramids. So your bones can leave records, even if you're not giving your descendants a diary. Yes, I'm talking off the camera here, okay? Okay, great. Looks like there are 5 minutes left in this segment. Ooh. Which means I'm going to hustle through the political stuff. Sorry. I'm on that one. Okay. So here's my sandwich. Archaic period, Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom. Religion became more democratic. What does that mean? Religion for the people. You don't need a big fancy pyramid to get to the abode of the gods. If you live a good life, one of the gods, Osiris, the god of the Nile, is going to weigh your heart. And if it's lighter than a feather, good luck with that. You get to enter this hall of justice with all the gods, the other gods, the gods of. I don't mean you would be a god, but your spirit would enter the hall of justice with the gods. Egypt will be invaded about 3,600 years ago by outsiders. Egypt was inherently conservative. Conservative means you don't value change. Change happens gradually, slowly. But in Egypt, did it really change? I mean, bodies are mummified. They tend not to decompose. The Nile floods every year. A god is our ruler. Things are good, right? Why do we need to change? They don't even have the wheel for a long time. But from outside of Egypt came invaders, the Hyksos, who brought in the wheel, brought in new metals, bronze, chariots, and bows, arrows, and took over Egypt for a time until the Egyptians kicked them out. Oh, we can use wheels on chariots and bronze, and we outnumber them, let's push them out. But the Hyksos helped to fertilize Egyptian culture. As the Egyptians pushed these invaders out, they kept going. They moved beyond the Nile Delta, they conquered foreigners, they enslaved foreigners who were in their midst. And by the 11th century, so by around 1000 BCE, 3,000 years ago, Egypt collapsed. We don't know exactly why. There was a time of troubles. In their writing, they talk about invasion by sea peoples from the Mediterranean. We still haven't figured out who they were. But probably just a kind of internal decay. It collapsed. That doesn't mean it was wiped out. It's going to become much smaller. Okay? Much smaller than it had been. And then later on, outsiders conquered, eventually even the Romans. Okay. Going to check my time once more. Okay. The map there shows Egypt under the empire. It's orange. Okay. So the Egyptians, having driven out the Hyksos, kept going through Palestine and came into contact with these green people here, the Hittites. Hittites were the children of Indo-Europeans. They also created a pretty strong empire based on iron technology. And there's a battle between them, and they stop each other right here, okay? Right near Syria. Okay, so politically we have this sandwich. Socially, we have basically a pyramid, right? Who's on top? Well, not even the pharaoh. The pharaoh and the royal family is kind of outside of the pyramid. On top we have the professional bureaucracy, paid government officials who were literate, who could write in either the hierarchic or hieroglyphic script that you're a little bit familiar with. Poor peasants, the bulk of the society. And then during the later period, the empire, the new kingdom, slaves, foreigners enslaved. Were the Hebrews enslaved? Probably. I mean, that's what their sources tell us. The Egyptians write about a people they call the Hapiru, who probably were the Hebrews, among other foreigners, right? Undocumented workers enslaved in Egypt. These societies were patriarchal, however, some women were powerful. Hatshepsut was an exception. She was a female pharaoh, but almost no one in Egypt knew she was female. Her son apparently disabled, and she took over his rule. In fact, when she's portrayed in art, she's portrayed as a man, okay, with like a beard. She reigned, the armies reigned, in charge. Don't worry about the dates, okay? 15th century BCE. We're going to pause here, come back after a commercial break, talking about the economy.